Hi, can you please be seated, guys? Yeah, Ajender. We'll start in about exactly 1 minute. And thank you all for coming in today. A very warm welcome to you all. Good afternoon to all the panelists who've, who are present here today. My name is Varun. I am representing the Bridge Incubator. The Bridge Incubator is a part of the Hero Group, Hero Enterprise. We are from the investment office of Mr. Munjal. Uh, More about it from my colleague Anuj in a bit, but I'd like to say that today we are talking about two things. One is arts and craft startup entrepreneurs. What is the landscape? What is the investment landscape in this uh, sector? What are we have investors here. They will talk about their perspective on what do they look at while investing in arts and crafts. We also will be speaking about the different types of new business models that are emerging in the arts and crafts sector. Uh, to give you a little bit about our incubator, we've been established, it's about 1 year now. We have, with the help of our partners here, selected three startups that we've invested in to the tune of 1 to 2 CR. This is seed funding that we provide. And with that, I'd like to open this floor to the panel. I'd like to welcome Anuj, who's the head of our initiative called the Bridge, to take you through this panel. Welcome, Anuj.
Thank you. Okay, sorry. Uh, Thank you all for being here today. We have a great set of panelists today, experts in the field. I must assure you at this point, I'm not an expert in the field, so forgive my faux pas. And before we get into it, just to introduce the Bridge, it's a cultural space that is coming up in Delhi, but it's more than a space. It's an institution that looks at performance, culture, arts, artisanship, crafts. It looks at both exhibition of these things, education on these things, skilling, incubation, and paths to market. It's an ambitious program, and there's more which I'm not covering. It's a pretty long page, but Varun's been building the incubator with Tajinder over here, and we've started on this journey where we hope not just to provide financial support, but also processes, systems, and all the other intangibles that an organization needs to work in the sector. But of course, it's now time for me to introduce our panelists. Um, to start with, I'd like to welcome Mr. Prashant, CEO of Startup and IT Promotion, Goa Government. I'm sorry, I have to factor for age now. I'd also like to welcome Ms. Sharon Bhutto, Executive Director of IFMR. Sorry? Lead University. Yeah. And Mr. Deepanshu Khandelwal, CEO, Catalyst AIC. Okay, he'll be back. Ms. Priya Krishnamurthy, founder, 200 Million Artisans. And Mr. Gaurav Majumdar, lead skill development uh, uh, and livelihood at the HCL Foundation. I think Deepanshu will join us in a moment. I think he stepped out for a coffee. But to set the context for the conversation, it's a broad set of conversations. We've got such great experts here. To set the context specifically for the sector, a question for all of you, and we'd love to hear this from you. When you look at India's arts and crafts economy today, what feels fundamentally broken in the current business model, and what feels like an underleveraged opportunity? Would you like to start?
Hi, good morning, good afternoon. First of all, thanks Serendipity for inviting HCL. for the panel discussion, and very much thanks to Varun and the team for such a lovely host. So we at HCL Foundation, just to give a little bit where we are, HCL Tech is the India's third largest IT company, and we are running the CSR business since last 12 years at HCL Foundation. And HCL Foundation also works in different space under the corporate social responsibility, which is the compliance by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. And we started working on the art and craft almost like 6 years back through a very special initiative which we called My eHeart, which is connecting artisan to the customer model. And this model basically strengthened the entire value chain of the handloom and handicraft sector, where we work with the artisan to build the stronger ecosystem, helping the product training, product designing, all sort of backward integration, which is eventually help the forward linkages to them, to the different institutions, to the businesses, to the government, to the retail. Coming back to your question, Anuj, what is mainly lacking in today's context, especially when we see our growth story, where we are working almost with 10,000 artisans across the country, more than 50 plus cluster spread across. One area which is still kind of a gap is the marketing opportunity. And it's a still second contribution in the GDP in terms of the employment in the Indian art and craft sector, and more than 50% are workforce for women. Still, the marketing opportunities, we are not able to link up. And it's a huge competition with the machine-made products, and especially with the education system, where the craft awareness is not there at the very fundamental level. That's a gap we can see, and again it becomes like an opportunity where we have to educate everyone that what is the art and craft, where it is coming, what is the source, what is the supply chain, how do we kind of strengthen it, and how do we make it more accessible to everyone here, and how do we make sure that people should be able to understand the story. It's not a product, it's a story of the craft which is coming. And fortunately, through different platform like CSR, government institution, we are trying to elevate it, we are trying to give a push, but still lots to be done at this point.
Mr. Prashant, would you like to give your feedback on the question and also a response to Gaurav's comments?
Yes, so I agree to what Gaurav is saying, that it's not that well understood. We always look at crafts as either a charitable thing or a luxury thing, but we don't understand that it could be like a SME or a product which could be actually leveraged for the benefit of society as well as the producer. Now,
So by and large, India being self-employed, the venue is that. And then I have wonderful opportunities to connect with people like Dipanshu and Gaurav to see, and also Priya from the craft side to see, okay, how do I put my understanding of how people in society work, how they integrate this. That's where my expertise would lie.
Priya, I saw you shaking your head vigorously through that, so
No, no,
please
I
could you
think-
share your
I
thoughts?
think Dipanshu should go
Go first, and then-
I will
I was wondering whether that was the smart thing to do.
go for it, Dipanshu.
No, so probably in this panel, our organization is one which works at the intersection of startups and crafts. We support crafts, we support craft startups in particular. In terms of what's broken, if you look at it, I do feel that it is high time that founders start looking at their craft businesses as consumer businesses. You should not continue to look at crafts as someone rightly said, charitable product or a heritage project. You are competing with the Zaras and the H&Ms of the world, and you have to position your product in that sense. If you are selling a shirt, a consumer has the option to buy your shirt versus Zara shirt versus H&M or several hundred other brands that are out there. If you start thinking in that fashion, that's when your product starts becoming competitive in nature, compared to if you feel that a customer should buy it largely because there's a story behind it, there's a struggling artisan in a village who has developed this product, somehow that's not selling anymore. That level of consumer does not exist in large proportions anymore. The consumer is looking for a great product. They will happily spend money, but it needs to be competitive to other products that are out there. I mean, you may feel that's not the right way to benchmark your product, but that's how it is. And crafts will have to compete with those. Some of the best examples that we have seen in our portfolio so far have come from companies who have worked extensively on product innovation and thus have been able to create competitive products at competitive pricing to machine-made products coming from other brands as well. And there are several young startups who are coming up with that sort of product innovation. That's what I feel is broken and which can be leveraged as well.
Thank you. That's really insightful. And I think that's a perfect trigger for someone like Priya to give us a response to.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm actually going to start with a counter question to the audience. How many people in this room are founders? How many people in this room consider themselves creativity led first? That's okay. So I'm going to speak from the perspective of a founder, one, not from any other perspective. So I'm a founder, but I also consider myself a creative person first. So let me set the context. Is it not working? So let me set the context from a founder's perspective and a creative person's perspective who's grown up in India. Perhaps Anuj, you might resonate with some of this. But when we are working with any form of craft, creativity, arts, performing arts, you name anything in this country, it's ghar ki murgi dal barabar. How many people understand Hindi here? So it's basically ghar ki murgi dal barabar, which basically means that it's so around us. We are surrounded by it. Therefore, what has happened over the many, many years is that we've not created systems in the larger ecosystem of supporting creativity and culture to support people who are building solutions within the larger creative and cultural landscape. We are seen as a nice to have. My professor used to say, vitamin hai hum log. We are not an antibiotic. What that basically means is that as a creative person, I studied creativity, I studied journalism. I was never taught to read a P&L statement ever in my life. I was taught the skill of writing. And it's only at the age of 40, I had to learn how to read a P&L statement. Now that is a structural and an infrastructure problem that we have not, and these are things this is not the founder's job. This is an ecosystem problem.
So, the business of craft.
Where do you get access to the basic language of business as a creative person? That's one of the challenges. Because we've not supported creativity overall, there is no support given to information about the people who are building solutions and creative solutions, right? What is innovation in the creative and cultural industries, in arts, in craft? What are the benchmarks? We don't have benchmarks. Where do we learn from? So now we have to basically create an ecosystem where we are learning from each other. So I actually agree to everything that people have said, because these are all different pieces of the puzzle. But the larger ecosystem from that perspective, personally what I feel as a founder is that we do not have a supportive, enabling, networked ecosystem where founders, investors, other kinds of stakeholders can also learn from each other to build better.
So, I'm going to come back to that, and taking off from where you were, I would like to ask all of you, what is the single biggest misconception that exists between investors, donors, and policymakers about funding the arts and crafts ecosystem? Because it's just following on from where you were. So I'd ask Sharon to start on that one.
Okay, I worked a lot with policymakers, funders, and then startups as well, because they're the enablers, no? So policymakers, they want to help society. The funders, usually they help the more poorer segments of society. And the startups, the sort of like they're helping that. So I don't think the government comes on the mindset, because I worked a lot with Natural Blue Livelihood missions. They don't come to the mindset that women are doing crafts and let's boost their creativity. That's one thing and I think we need to distinguish those two. I think the work that is done in handmade is not always creative, but it could be helpful. No, someone who makes. I see this movement happening in Canada where people now have farms where they make goat soap. That's not very creative, but it's very helpful, and there's a market for it, no, because people are willing to pay in that movement. So I do feel that maybe the non-conversions from the government, I'll start there because that's where scale comes from. Funders are willing to fund where the government is able to produce scales, and startups love scale. So maybe that's the way to go. Because the creative, the craft community, I would say, it's not called the craft community, it's called like sort of like the livelihood community, is mostly craft. So I think that's the definitions that we have to do. I think converging things together. I do think that a huge portion of these livelihood people, I would say, by and large, are not creative. They're just very diligent. They're able to recreate something, and they have maybe other skills. They understand like lot. They make carpets. They understand the quality of the carpet and things like that. There may be a portion that are creative but are not enabled. So maybe we can differentiate that. I think those are two interesting things to go about. When you have the livelihoods that's more like handmade, that's an area where I think the government should encourage more. One is that this is something that we're actually studying with NRLM. They created this program called Lakpati Didi program, where every woman should have at least 1 lakh of income, which is a great start because, you know, to be an entrepreneur, you should not be on survival mode all the time. No, one has to have at least a foundation of money. And they're trying to figure out how to amplify that. So, and I visit a lot of these women, like some products are very local, like you mentioned, Dipanshu. People are very price sensitive. So I think the ideal is they've done a lot in the agriculture market, like the FPO, like the Amul model, no? Milk is not a creative product, but it's a livelihood product, no? A lot of people love it. Making soap is not, making brooms. But if someone's able to aggregate those products, and I think that market linkage that the government has to have, they have to be able to, like, for example, I don't know here in Goa, but often there's Disney Guild in Tamil Nadu. So if the government is able to sell in bulk, say, I don't know, women are able to produce 1,000 bars of soap, there should be someone who helps push, like a retailers, no, push those soap to places where there are local markets. Then you have national markets. National markets could be like procurement systems through government, through universities. They might need bags and things like that. The government can mandate, like, and I was talking last time with Gaurav, I've been reading a lot on mental health and health. It's super healthy to have handmade clothes. The impact over time of chemicals that we're producing to our body is insane. If you look at the ROI and you're well aware on the long term, no one would purchase a product that's not made by tailoring because it's a good investment business. So that's one thing the government can do. The third thing is goes to the creative economy, like Priya mentions, that there needs to be much better way to put creativity as an important business model, not just because if people prefer to align their business, their way to learn a life with what they're really talented at, they should be able to do it. It's just because if your talent is music or being very creative, you should have the equal opportunity to have a business, something like that, as someone else that makes cars, for example. That sometimes the government can enable that as well.
So, Prashant, again, this is about misconceptions that need to be corrected across funders and funders, policymakers. In that same context, I know very often, and I've come across, everyone says the government can do this, but could you address those misconceptions? Because I think it's across the ecosystem. It's not just the government.
Yeah, I think government should not get involved full on this. Government should be a facilitator. It should be based on market demand and supply. It's an enterprise. The moment government comes and starts regulating this, it will not be liked by one party or the other. So that's what we understand and we feel. But definitely we need to facilitate because some of the challenges definitely is at a very early stage for people still don't understand the difference between, investors particularly, they feel enterprise-led businesses can be invested, but livelihood-led businesses cannot be invested because they are looking at returns of 5x and 10x, assuming 70 to 80% of them will fail. So how do we tackle this is one basic fundamental question which will always be there. So government has some outlooks and policies. So one of the ways we are looking at, we have a kind of a loan scheme, which is like a soft loan and which is like a patient loan where in the first year you don't have to repay back. And up to 25 lakhs is what is available for anybody who wants to pick up. And it's like almost 100% available. It's not based on any particular thing. If you have an intent, you want to pick up some money to work on a project, it's available for you. That's as easy as that. Now coming back to the other support system, for example, how do we help in market access at an early stage? How the government helps? So Goa has a program known as Swayam Purna Goa, And then when people are making products, particularly self-help groups are do make household products or bakery products and edible products and all. So during Ganesh festival and those kind times, there used to be some kind of support system. Now government has formally launched some kind of an e-market space known as the Swayambhurna e-market, where self-help group ladies and products like that could be sold and could be marketed. Uh, Another point I would like to say is that there is a good support for handmade products. Like Kundbi is one of Goa's traditional weave, handmade weave, and Goa is and the Kundbi product is also having a GI indicator. So government has made it mandatory that any guest who comes to Goa is given a Kundbi shawl and maybe a Kundbi sari as a gift. So so a lot of traditional artisans could be supported. Basically, these are market access programs which are not basically used to drive the demand side, but to facilitate a little bit of early stage support for artisans. So these are a few things which we have in mind, but there are multiple programs. Now, one point I would like to highlight, which Priya mentioned, is awareness and education is lacking. See, I as an enterprise go into the startup ecosystem office and start talking about and asking for and demanding for a support system there. It's very difficult for that office. And even today, many of the offices work in silos. Somehow that has to come together. Everybody has to work together. People need to support each other. So what we normally do is, because I have worked in the ecosystem before coming into the government setup, so I have a fair idea about how the ecosystem works. So normally what we do is we guide people to the various departments. So that kind of support system is also an essential. But I think the incubators are doing a great job of that, of supporting startups and enterprise at a very early stage. But still there is lot of work to be done, and very, very important that all the stakeholders work on it holistically.
So, I'm going to move on to a question which is addressed, to you, Dipanshu. And, I would really like, and also Prashant, from your vantage point, in a state institution, startup mission, and a technology incubator, what does a good pipeline of craft ventures look like? And where does it currently break down? Idea stage, early revenue, or at scaling? I mean, this was more taking off from what Prashant was just saying, but I'd like to have your response to that before Prashant elucidates us.
For us, we have a very clear thesis when it comes to supporting craft companies. You have to be working at the core product innovation level if you want investment or support from Catalyst. That's a very simple and plain thesis. So we do not work with enterprises who are merely marketplaces or who are, people say we are removing middlemen, but who they themselves become middlemen. So we don't work with those enterprises. Our thesis is very clear. If you are innovating at the core product level, that is where we come in. In terms of where it breaks, it mostly breaks at early revenue for us. And the reason is, I was just listening to the discussion, so many conflicting thoughts in mind, but I'll put it diplomatically, that we use the word market 50 times, but most enterprises don't understand market. That's where our pipelines break. There's a massive mismatch when it comes to the product market fit. Everybody is trying to create intricate products, selling themselves as intricate craft enterprises, whereas there's a massive mass of customers which will buy simple craft products also. Ajrak print, for example, does not have to be extremely intricate every time. You can sell cheaper Ajrak shirts as well to a mass market and create a business out of it. You're still supporting craft, you're still supporting block print, and you're still working in the same space. But somehow most of the enterprises who come and where the conversation breaks down is when they are only looking at the very top tier of people who understand crafts intricately. There's still that market will always exist. People who know crafts, who understand craft will always exist, will always buy the most beautiful and creative form of craft out there. But the product market fit in terms of the startup and the enterprise, that's where it completely breaks down for us.
But
especially early revenue.
But taking another context of market, does the traditional marketplace, which provided livelihood for centuries, and with all the, as you said, the middlemen, pipeline aggregators, and not that they're doing a bad job, the conflict between the two, does the traditional marketplace still have a place, or
It
does it?
does. I always say that you can't simply blame what has existed for centuries, which had helped survive these people before you came in as a Superman and tried to just supercharge the entire system. This system had existed. Yes, there are flaws. Yes, there are exploitations happening. But you can't simply dismiss the system that has existed. And I still see a lot of people going to traditional Saras fairs, to government marketplaces, to khadi stores who are still buying products from there. Has that diminished? That has been the case in the global consumer economy in general. So you can't really pinpoint crafts in that. There are newer models of supply coming in, but simply dismissing a system that has existed for some time rather than improving it is something I completely disagree with. And rightly to your point, it does exist. There are still a lot of these artisans are still selling their leather goods in the local markets. If you look at the supply chain in depth, and a lot of that
That's-
sale is still coming from there.
That's where the daily meal comes in, and
Exactly.
not the huge order that is a bonus once in a while.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay. So great. So would you like to tell me what your pipeline would look like?
Actually, Priya mentioned a great point that particularly when it comes to startup and companies around art and culture, art and crafts, it's more about the skill set rather than the business part of it. So I think that's one critical area. Unless the business gets married to the skill set, it's not a complete cycle. So I won't want the technical person or the skilled person to be the entrepreneur, but definitely want the entrepreneur to be married to this and become one team. So whether it's investments, whether it's the growth of a company or the sustainability of the company, that's critical. So the pipeline should be such that the person who is building the product should also be able to complete the life cycle of business. Then it's a good pipeline.
Great, thank you. That's really cool. Sharon and Priya, just both your organizations, IFMR, Lead, Kriya University, and 200 Million Artisans, invest heavily in research of of the financing needs for craft-led MSMEs. What are the one or two counterintuitive insights that you may have found in your data, and what has these revealed about how these enterprises are financed or not financed these days?
So I'll just set the context for what Business of Handmade was. So Business of Handmade is, and for those of you who want to understand and want some understanding of what is the kind of business models that exist and how people finance them, please feel free to go to businessofhandmade.com. It's a public resource. A lot of people have been featured there, and approaches to financing craft have been featured there. So when we set out to do the research, I think we spoke to almost 72 stakeholders, both in India and across the world. We also mapped financing needs of about 516 MSMEs across India. What was interesting about our research and the findings, and I'll start with what we found and what is then counterintuitive, what that we found later, is that 88% of the 516 enterprises, and when we say enterprises, these are enterprises who have a turnover of between 20 lakhs annual turnover going right up to about 6 crores to 7 crores. The maximum number of enterprises we mapped were sitting in this bracket, which is probably most craft-led businesses. Now, 88% was self-financing, which basically means you're taking money from your family, your friends, or you're putting money back from profits back into the business. Now, 91% said they were looking for external capital, but did not know how to access it. One, because financial literacy was a big barrier. Two, they were not comfortable with the traditional equity models and the traditional debt models. Now, why is that? Because 50% of the enterprises we mapped were women founders supporting a 50% plus workforce. Now, what typically happens, and there are solutions now emerging, but a woman generally doesn't have access to assets or collateral. How do you get a bank loan if you want to? right? So even access to finance in many ways, and this is of course a lot is changing and has changed. Now those were some of the basic barriers that we found. Also, when we are talking about an enterprise, there is no one kind of enterprise in the craft sector. There are enterprises that begin and work at the grassroots ecosystem. Their business models are very different. Therefore, their financing needs are different, and what they need to then build their business is very different. We identified 6 different kinds of enterprises, and we are now seeing more. Also, when we talk about a business, somebody working at a D2C level or a luxury level is a different business model. Somebody working at the grassroots is a very different business model. What you need is very, very different. And that is what, from us, was the counterintuitive piece. And what we also saw was that for the kind of capital that was needed for these businesses, those solutions didn't exist in the market. So there is actually opportunity for folks, and we work with Dipanshu quite extensively, and we know that he's been innovating also on these kind of approaches. Because what does a business, when you're running a craft-led business, do you need to dilute equity every time? I don't think so. What you need access to is working capital, to pay the artisans, to buy the raw material, and so on and so forth. Do we have working capital solutions for businesses like us? Now that is really where innovation needs to happen. Like he's done innovation and we featured it. And I feel there is so much opportunity to build those businesses, because some businesses will go on to exit. They might get an IPO, hopefully in the next 10 to 15 years. But the larger number of businesses, if we can even take our business to 100 crore business, I think that is the opportunity that we're sitting on. Because if we're sitting with 10 artisans today, and we can build a 100 crore business, even a 50 crore business, and we are able to take from 10 artisans to 5,000 artisans, I think we are sitting on a big win. And therefore, for us building business models and us supporting business models, there is need to also understand what does success look like in a country like India for our businesses.
Livelihood.
From every perspective.
Every perspective.
Thanks a lot, Priya. So good. I'll compliment to what you say from a different perspective. I just want to say one thing on the market access local. I visited in Andhra Pradesh these Kalamkari artists. These are award-winning people that got honored by Modi. They do not want to put their products online. And when I asked why, they said that they put online and people copy them. So I think there needs to be, and I don't look into the legal thing, but I think there needs to be much more legal recourses for creative people, especially at the lower thing. When I was touched by what he was saying, because I said, why don't you sell more? And they actually tried put online, but if someone copies your design, then it's a little bit like, I think he was very sad about that, lack of a better word. So I think that legal ecosystem to support true the art on the creative space has to be there. So I think that's why they remain a little bit local, because at least word to mouth, nobody will come, and it's the trust building. So I'll go back to the finance. So I'll compliment. So Priya, you looked at the businesses that are bigger, 20 lakhs. 90% of businesses in India, the turnover is below 10 lakhs. So we did a study recently looking at the equity portfolio of Dell Foundation, and we analyzed a little bit like how do enterprises grow. So we sort of split this. So 10 lakhs is sort of like what we discussed above is sort of like that nano entrepreneur segment. Below that is like tiny nano enterprises. The bulk, we separate 3 segments. Below 3 lakhs, 3 to 10, and above 10. Below 3 lakhs is where the bulk of women are. That's where the bulk of the quantity and things like that. One preconception that we saw is that women enterprises are not as profitable as men. So that's a huge fallacy. And because of that, they tend to get better credit terms. So what we saw is, they're in different markets. First of all, they have different products than men would produce. It could be by practical reason, something like that. When we looked at, and we did a study, when they got a loan, in the middle of the loan, at the end of the tenure, women do grow their businesses. They're profitable, they're stable compared to men. They're not as profitable as men because women by nature, they have sort of like the helper of the family, no? So they tend to balance the family needs with their business. So at that below 3 lakh level, people have that economy. Women being the benefactor of the family, the nurturer, And that's the role that we gave to women as well, no? We tell them that, okay, you have to take care of the family. That also goes back to the reason why Priya said women don't have wealth, they cannot accumulate. When we saw men, we saw their savings increase and the reinvestment in the business increase. When we realized that with women, the childhood expense for the education increased, so they invested in that. They bought maybe a few assets more to help in the household. So I think until people understand that and look at that, and what happens as well is that, and I studied also these systems like why do banks not include women? And I had like fiercely attacked when they say, no, we don't refuse women. Because they look at the only thing is they look at raw numbers without context. So the government needs to take a better lens to see, and women tend to spend less time in their business as well. So if you calculate time per business, they're as productive. So instead of having these crude rules of thumb things like I remember I was studying the ICICI model when they tried to look into micro enterprises. It's a credit system in Mumbai where the 24-year-old MBA, and apologies for MBAs that came here, that analyzes business not profitable. So I think that's a gap, that's a huge gap that would be really profitable to so the big thing is that women business are profitable. You just need to look different lens from it, and it's worth investing. In particular, I studied the ones that had access to credit. There's a huge new to credit behavior. We need to understand. And what I recommended as well is when you want to study women businesses, if they're going well, look at also debt to income ratio of the household. And women is able to balance both. She's on the right track for success as entrepreneur.
I think that's really insightful, and it's interesting because you brought in elements where the woman entrepreneur brings in a lot of sense of community, I think, with it, which is another amplifier. But we're taking off from the financial structuring. I'm going to ask Gaurav and Priya to address this one, as you both work with communities where livelihoods and not just enterprises are at stake. How do you design business models where skilling, social protection, and income security for the artisan, the family, and the community are built in and not just treated as a CSR activity?
So, Anuj, coming back, what HCL Foundation is doing, especially through the corporate social responsibility, we are not taking a project just for the sake of the CSR, because it's a 2% mandate by the government. So recently, our board, HCL Tech board, given an opportunity that now we can start work with the startups, and also there is a change in the amendment of the CSR policy that we can work with the startups. That's how the CSR space is also getting evolved, which Priya and Sharon was talking. What are the tools? We have to see this community not as a project beneficiary, but more like a participant, which HCL Foundation is looking. And in fact, we recently, just to let you know, that we signed a partnership with ISB, Indian School of Business. I was telling Varun yesterday, with the T-Hub, with Telangana government. And it's a Discover She program, where these women artisans are getting trained on the DPR, on the detailed project report, where being trained as like a professional, where going to prepare a business plan, that what are the tools required, what are the operating costs, when the break even will come. Definitely as a banker, when they approach, they are not going to see this is coming from an SHG or this is coming from a cooperative. They want to understand the business plan, business model. And that's how the CSR play a very instrumental role by investing them into the education system, basically. And that DPR, through that, they are getting a loan of 5 lakh to 30 lakhs or 40 lakhs, depending upon the business plan. Second part, where as a CSR, we are getting invested into the incubation space. And that's where the next jump, which the foundation is doing, where we are going to take that leap mainly to make them incubate in different form of incubation, where it's from the entirely extending the value chain. We're trying to enter into the packaging space, we're into the branding space, and that's where it's going to very, very helpful for them, not to become like a mere producer, but to be the entrepreneur. And we have to understand these enterprises can only grow when they go through the accelerator program, and where the HCL is not only playing like a just giving the money for some time and then pull off the project. We want to make sure it should end to the ultimate goal, what is the breaking the vicious cycle of the poverty. And that can only happen when we provide them all tools and all ammunition. And again, it's not going to be overnight impact. We have to be there for certain amount of time with them till the hand holding is completed. Otherwise, just a kind of a for the paperwork, for the everything, we are going to be there. But until and unless we are going to be there with the implementing partner, with the different institution, it cannot be called as a complete success. So that's how we have to be, those who are from the CSR, they have to understand we have to be there with the community, with the project for a certain amount of time, give them a little kind of a cushion to kind of revive, because there's a lot of risk factor also. And these enterprises, I was there in one of the conference at IRMA recently. One model, we have to understand those who are a founder, those who are making any product, we have to understand it has to be profitable. Otherwise, it is not going to exist for a longer period of time. We can there for a support from the government, from the foundation, from the philanthropic group. But until and unless the profitable knack is not there as an enterprise, it will be difficult to grow over the period of time.
Priya, again, going back to how we can look at this impact beyond just a CSR cycle, or is that the only cycle? And, how do we ensure skilling, social protection, and income security across the ecosystem?
So I'll start by saying that when we talk about craft, I personally think that craft is not just a product. Craft is a product, it's a process, it's a way of thinking, it is also experiences. Now, when you sort of take you shift the lens from craft has to create a product, and that is the only business model that exists. Basically, you expand the scope of what are the different kind of business models that can emerge. Now, when we talk about what is the role of the enterprise in this larger ecosystem, right? Now, when you take away the fact that craft is a product, then can craft also create experiential, experience-based business models? Can it create process-based business models like the one Radesh is building, for example? Can it become, industrial craft? It's emerging, right? We are only talking about a certain kind of consumer right now. Can it become, other kinds of forms? Can it become a technology application to serve the other ecosystem players? Now, when we start sort of taking a lens of, okay, this is a value chain. It begins at the artisan and it goes right up to the consumer, which means there is so many, for us to build a value chain, it requires a whole bunch of solutions to emerge. That's one part. Now, the average, and I will go back to the research that we did with Sharon and lead with Priya University. What the research said, and we were mapping weavers in certain states. The average age of the weaver was 45 years. And they were, the annual income was less than 5,000 rupees. Now you tell me, in today's day and time, with the way in which inflation is going, does that sound viable to any of us in this room? Because if that is the annual income of income of a weaver, not annual, but monthly income of a weaver, who is supporting multiple people in his family, that is not viable. Where the enterprise comes in, which is why we talk about enterprise. Not everybody is cut out to build an enterprise. Even within the artisan ecosystem, some artisans are naturally gravitate towards entrepreneurship. Some artisans just want a 9-to-5 job with regular income, especially in the south of India or certain parts of India, and which is fair. So you can't build one kind of business model for everybody. Where the enterprises come in, especially in the creative manufacturing and handmade ecosystem, is what does the enterprise do? First of all, you have to enter the market. You have to first build trust with the community. You can't just enter the market and start making products. It doesn't happen in the handmade ecosystem. You will take 6 months to a year to build trust with the community. And this is informal communities. Chances are they don't have bank accounts. Chances are they don't have GPay. Chances are they don't have any formal identification. What the enterprise does, it could be a social business, it could be a brand, it could be a startup. It is in their interest to, one, make sure that the artisan is making more than 5,000 rupees a month, or that income. That income needs to go up. Otherwise, there is no next generation we are going to see. And this is data speaking, right? The enterprise is often the one that is going into the ecosystem and building social protections, because it is in the enterprise's interest so that the communities continue working with them. That's how scale happens. So you can continue, go from 10 artisans to 10,000 artisans only when there is a market element built into the design of the enterprise. And the enterprise can address, there are at least 10 SDGs that craft and handmade ecosystem address. It doesn't have to be livelihoods. I have a problem with this livelihoods argument sometimes, because then it takes the focus away from climate solutions.
Oversimplifies it.
It oversimplifies it, because I feel that there are wonderful climate solutions emerging. Circularity was blowing up at Kula at our event this year. Now, it automatically, when you see it from a different lens, you see the possibilities of innovation. And I think craft now needs to be synced with the language of innovation. And we need to start talking about entrepreneurship also from a perspective of innovation, not just livelihoods, not just, and impact can come in different ways. I think personally, that's where I feel the next sort of leg and the push needs to happen when we talk about craft.
So, just taking off from there, Sharon, this is tying your last set of comments and Priya's comments right now together. I was just, how do you move instead of reinforcing traditional gender roles, with, keeping women, for example, only in low value, piece rate work. How do we work, or how can the enterprise in this case work with moving them into leadership, ownership, and design roles, move them up the value chain, up the process? Because very often they're actually doing this, but it's not recognized, if I'm not mistaken. And, Gaurav, you can also just add to that. I just thought, Sharon, you'd be...
Yeah, I have two things. So one is, I fiercely believe in markets. I'm an economist, and I look at lens through, like you mentioned, everything has to be market driven. I do believe that the lens by which people evaluate that market has to be changed, not the way we understand markets. So like I mentioned, how you evaluate gender within that perspective, how do you scale, how do you look at businesses, that has to change from the finance perspective. The second thing is, I do believe I've been studying a lot technology, the impact of technology on multiple dimensions. So we view technologies as digital, UPI, putting on like a website or something like that. But I think technology can take people to a different level. So I talk a lot to our offices at IIT Research Park, where we have these kooky professors, I would say, in AI and imagine the future. So I have this story from doomsday that everyone's going to lose their job to technology will help humans be more human, which I adopt somewhere in the middle. I do feel that for women, technology could be a great boom, provided we help them get access to it. Say, for example, Priya was mentioning she doesn't like the business side. Maybe she can be more creative if AI can just help her with the numbers, which it can, which we've seen a lot. We've also seen how women can get skills, like I would call it maybe the iTunesization of business skills, as and when you need, you grow, because no one has time to sit, especially women don't have time to sit and understand the whole business. You need to know what to do with your taxes like 2 weeks before the taxes happen. You need to know. And people who are in the creative mindset, they're very different. So again, it's changing the mindset by which we evaluate things. We're not making bricks here. Those are two things that I feel that very critical. And one last thing on gender is 75% of women are in home-based business. So I think technology will make also them more visible. Yeah.
Completely agree with Sharon, and in fact, the capacity building program is very much required at this point of time for all, especially the women artisans and all. One just anecdote I would like to quote. So in South Delhi, the chips and food and beverage, and especially one chips company, they have a turnover of 500 crore per month. And I was listening to in the podcast, and it was told that why not artisan business can grow in a such manner. Only difference is the digital marketing part. And we have to believe, especially I'm coming from a technology company, we have to invest in the digital market. And that can only lead to that simplifying the solutions to it.
So now, before we go into the rapid fire and then into the thing, I have a question for Prashant and for Dipanshu. And technology is often pitched as a magic bullet. And this leads on from where both of you have ended that. And platforms, e-commerce, fintech. Now, where does tech truly transform the craft value chain? And where is it oversold, which we also come across enough? And sometimes where is it harmful? I'd really like both of you to address this.
Okay. No, so in craft, if you look at crafts in particular, technology has to act as an enabler. It doesn't really have to be the core product. And we have seen multiple examples of technology benefiting crafts. From what Gaurav was mentioning, we are doing a project with HCL Tech where for the first time ever, artisans got to know about Pinterest and ChatGPT. And what they did was they started giving countless prompts to ChatGPT, whatever they could think of, and they created their logos and they created mock-ups of products which have never been made and put it on Instagram. And now they are generating demand from the mock-ups and only creating the product if there is sufficient demand. Where they've been able to cut costs because they don't have to do any sampling anymore. The product may look 10% here and there, but that's the nature of a handicraft product.
It's like an artisanal shine model.
Exactly, kind of that. And we were amazed to see that how these artisans have, you just give them that piece of technology as an enabler and you will see massive results coming in. In crafts, I do believe this is one area which will probably never be overrun by technology because the handmade physical feel of a craft product would always remain. And no AI, at least till date, can replace that.
What about the harm of things such as what Sharon had mentioned, design, protecting IP, things like that?
See, I am very pragmatic when it comes to designs. Designs will always be copied. They have been copied forever, for a very long time. I'm not sure how you can actually protect a design because the biggest of the corporations in the world have not been able to protect their designs. A lot of knockoffs have come off from the best of the products in the world. You just have to keep innovating and keep believing in your product. There are, for example, just take luggage for that matter. Samsonite is probably one of the best in the world. You would never see them do digital marketing. You will never see them do billboards. They believe in their product. There have been multiple knockoffs in the Indian space, global space, but you believe in the product, it sells, and it still sells, and it still continues to sell the way it was. So I think design IP and design protection is very, very difficult. Nobody has been really able to do it, and legal framework around it is very, very murky at this point. So I'm not sure if that is even possible. You just need to continue innovating on your product and design and just keep working on that. That's what I feel.
Prashant,
Yeah.
risks and opportunities that tech brings.
Yeah. So I guess artisans struggle in the business part, which we have discussed at length. So there are certain areas which technology can help the artist. For example, inventory is a big challenge. When you're buying in small quantities and discovering the inventory material and all these are a big challenge, which where technology can play a role. Storytelling definitely is another area. Discoverability, logistics, another key area with all the e-commerce sites which are there. Payment gateways are known to everybody and that business to fly and so forth using technology. So technology doesn't do that. Technology, it's just an enabler. It also takes its own sweet time for the enterprise to develop. Now just wanted to add one more element to this. Wanted to share that, Goa as a state is looking at this sector with a lot of focus and interest. Interest in the sense it's not just about the talk, but the intent is very clear. We have had our first startup policy in the year 2017, where it was kind of a policy where we were looking at Goa as a destination, and then we tried to stabilize, and today we want to make sure that it moves in the right path. And the crux of the policy is that we want to make Goa the creative capital of India. So it's a big statement which the state has made.
Jaipur, watch out. But
so the intent is very clearly laid out there. Why we did that was we wanted to clearly demarcate Goa in the technology space from established spaces like Bangalore and Hyderabad. And we saw there are a lot of creative people, a lot of people who are designers. We have more than 100 professional designers from NID who have settled down in Goa and building from Goa. And these are all people who are in the creative space and can play a great role in the creative community and creative sector, particularly in the art and craft too. And by the way, there are equal number of women and equal number of men in this sector, professionals. I understand we are looking at another sector where, housewives and household women are part of it. But if you look at the professional line also, we find the gender equality there. So I just wanted to put it out there that Goa is looking at this sector in a big way, and we surely hope to see Goa, thriving as creative economy in the next 3 years.
So, the only thing I can say, and thank you so much for that, but you know, 50% and the numbers close to 50% that reflect women's involvement in the creative sectors. It's a largely unorganized sector. As it gets more organized, I think that gender ratio is going to actually show a very different story. And for us that work in the sector, I can only tell you that the story is it's one very gender positive sector.
Yes.
I'd also now, quickly run through before we open it, because we want enough time for questions, to a couple of rapid fire questions where we'll just pass the mic around and let's get your comments quickly. I mean, reasonably rapid. There are startup organizations sitting here, so I'd like to ask the question: if an investor or a CSR impact investor or CSR head is listening today and wants to enter this space responsibly, what are the top 2 red flags and top 2 green flags they should look for when evaluating a craft, enterprise, or initiative, and particularly add a nuance of a women's empowerment lens? So, who'd like to go first? Can we start here? Yes. Yeah.
Getting the mic. So
rapid fire. That's a full-blown answer.
Come on, 2.
So two green flag, if I'm seeing from the CSR perspective, one definitely the rich heritage of the India, and that's how the amendment has also given an opportunity to work with the Indian culture and heritage. And in fact, just to add, Anuj, that we also signed a partnership with the National Craft Museum, which is one of the oldest museum in the country, to revival of the craft and education. Second, a green flag is the authenticity, which is coming from the roots, from the source. That is a huge opportunity for any company or any investor to get into that. I would say not the red flag, but there is some still the weakness, especially the scale, which Prashant has already spoken about. And second, the technological advancement.
Thank you.
So for me, one green flag, I'll start with a green flag for this sector would be for any investor, at least that has been our experience. This is a sector which starts making money from day one. It is patient returns, but there are returns. Whereas in most other tech sectors, you expect your money to lose very quickly. But in crafts, we have seen the enterprises are resilient, and if you provide them with patient capital, the returns are steady, but lower but steady.
It's not a 50 bagger in 5 years.
Yeah, but it's a 10-12% bagger, which is steady over a period of time, which is decent. I mean, anybody in philanthropy, if they even make their principal back, that's a big thing in this sector. That's one green flag. Red flag would be, need to work with founders who really understand business very well, business modeling very well, profit numbers, finances. And this is just an advice to founders as well to really get strong on those aspects of the business.
Priya?
So, because we've just concluded another edition of Kola Innovate, I think one of the things that my team and I have been looking now, when we look at an enterprise and read their application, is that we don't look at scalability, we don't look at all those metrics that funders actually look at. What we look at is this idea, do they have a perspective, first of all? Do they have an idea that has the potential to sort of blow up in the next 5 to 6 years? Are they, is there something new that they have created, or are they looking at it differently as a business? Because we see out of the 200 applications, you get like about 150 applications that are just trying to build a marketplace, and for us, that is not idea. That is not something that we want to take a bet on. And to both Dipanshu's point as well as Gaurav's point, some of the other things that we look at is, so if there is an idea, is it backed by numbers? And numbers can be impact numbers, numbers can be money numbers, financial numbers. Do they speak the language? Because often we have applications where enterprises will come to us and say, do you want external investment? And they'll say yes, but then they'll say, I want 2 crores in grant. So do you understand the difference between funding, financing and investment? Because all three are 3 different words. Do you have even the basic financial literacy around how you plan to build your business? So we often don't take a bet on whether you're already making money, but do you have the potential to make money? Do you have all the basic that you need as an entrepreneur to then take it to the next stage?
Hello. 2 things. I think green flag. I think the future is creative. I think that's where I would put my money there. I think as we go, creativity will have a huge premium. Maybe a little bit slower than we think, but it will burst. People will want to have more and more human connections. Secondly, I think the big red flag is one cannot evaluate this industry with the same industry as usual. This is not business as usual. This is a completely different set of metrics that we have to create. And it could be the ones that you mentioned. Those are the 2 things I'd say, yeah.
I think the red flags, the first one is mostly women founders at a very early stage who are building think that their enterprise needs to be supported by everybody, even if they don't have a business model. So building a business model and coming to a conclusion where others will also find value is critical. Second red flag is most of the enterprises founders are not in leadership role. They are basically producers. So converting oneself from a producer to a leadership role is critical. Only then it can become investable. So these are my 2 red flags versus the green flags. If they convert into positives, then it becomes a green flag.
I was just going to ask about a mindset shift. Do we see the need for mindset shift across the ecosystem? I'm not talking purely about funders. I'm not talking about the entrepreneur, nor am I talking just about the policymaker. But if there is one mind space shift that you think needs to be made, could you just tell us what you think it is?
Put women in roles of power in the creative and cultural industries. They know what they're building.
I just think they are already there, but we just don't recognize it. I hope it gets there. I understand what you're saying.
So one correction I think should happen at the grassroots level is when somebody is working as in a community, because I see a lot of businesses built by community, they should come together and work together. I'll cite an example. We had a program which was supported by NABARD for Kunbi viewers in Goa, particularly like around 100 women were skilled, and then they built a company and a society, and there was a market linkage that product will be purchased and it will be connected. But we found there were a lot of issues within the people who are working in that society. So unless people start thinking like entrepreneurs, looking at the long-term goal, that if they don't become entrepreneurs in that mindset, it's difficult to sustain this business.
Would you like to?
Yeah, what mindset? I think everything has to be more human centric, even in leadership, in entrepreneurship, all of this. I think I'm doing parallel what's happening on the global economy. I think things were not built necessarily from people's beneficiary perspective, and we see things imploding and changing over time. So going from a more human centric entrepreneurial models for people by the people, and things like that.
And I do agree with you on that one. I completely agree. We'll come back to that. I'm going to let you be the last one on this one. I know, but I'm going to come back to you on that one. Dipanshu, would you give me a mind space shift?
I think it's already happening to some of the startups and founders that we see. I'll only talk from that perspective. You need to look at it from a 70% business, 30% creative kind of mindset, because your business makes money, you make money, the artisan makes money. It's that simple how it is. That's what I feel.
Yeah, move away from the handout conversation.
Yeah.
I would say the needle is moving, and in fact, we work with a lot of government institution, knowledge partner across a lot of other CSR think tank, and it's evolving over the last couple of years, especially last 10 years. So I would be very optimistic with that.
Thank you. And Priya, so the final word on the mind space shift.
So we were actually talking earlier, Varun and I. So because the creative and cultural industries as a space is so nascent in our country, and we're still understanding how to build it.
Yet it's got thousands of years. I mean,
I mean, when we talk about a formal sort of, a support infrastructure, and a lot of us are trying to build now, a lot of us are trying to make sense of it, a lot of us are genuinely trying to support the ecosystem, the people, the artisans, the entrepreneurs, the solution providers. And I think we all, one mindset shift that I would actually encourage, request, and put it out there is that at the early stages, I think, to adding to what Sharon also said, we need to sort of also shift our mindset away from this competition kind of thinking that everybody has to compete with each other. Because I think there is great value in actually pooling in resources and building something that is significantly, meaningful and impactful to the larger communities that we're all trying to serve. And I think if we can shift that mindset from saying, okay, you and I need
from
to compete with
competition
each
to
other,"
collaboration.
I do believe.
But
I
that's
think
what the
the
arts
future.
space is all about. And, I think Prashant also highlighted that factor. So this is a perfect time to bring the audience into the conversation. And as a collaborative exercise, questions, please. I can see a lot of startup people. So the gentleman over there in the grey t-shirt. If you could please tell us who you are and what you do before you ask your question, please.
Sure. My name is Suresh Kumar. I was actually just a visitor and I saw this. I was actually quite impressed that you had this topic at the festival. So I just came in to listen. But I belong to an organization called TIE, the Indus Entrepreneur. I'm the president of the chapter in New Jersey. And innovation has been one of the things that I've been working on. Now, at TIE, we have used the concept of connectors, which is basically people who are willing to give back, and also the diaspora networks to really help the startups in the technology space. I was wondering if there is room for something along those lines in the arts and crafts space, and how can organizations like TIE, for example, help?
Who would you like to address this to?
Anybody who's willing to.
So you are absolutely. I mean, there's definitely need, and I think TIE actually can take. TIE Rajasthan is doing something like that already, and we work with them, and they have been supporting us, and they have created a mentor pool which specifically works with craft startups. But now, as the number of founders grow, as the number of startups grow, there's probably a need to have a dedicated an organization like that, and probably Priya is best positioned to do that and probably build that, something like that. But you're right, this is required, and what TIE has done to tech entrepreneurs, somebody can definitely do for craft entrepreneurs. And I mean, TIE could actually take lead in that, I mean, along with some of the other people.
We are in touch with the Thai Bangalore chapter, and they are setting up a chapter in Goa very soon. And we are working on the concept of making Goa the creative capital. So everything is online.
Wonderful.
Thank you for sharing that. I've actually just come back from the US and I did meet a whole bunch of people there, diaspora specifically. And there was so much interest among the diaspora community in sort of reframing the conversation around, handmade, not just as a sort of poverty porn narrative or a charity narrative, but really as an opportunity narrative and an entrepreneurship narrative. And I think there was so much general interest among the diaspora. And in fact, we were asked and requested to sort of bring some of these conversations that we're seeing, because a lot of people are actually shocked by the fact that there is actual beautiful innovation happening. And when we say innovation, it is not just about, oh, let's build a marketplace. We are talking innovation that can actually be replicated not just in India but across the world, that has global relevance. But where we are challenged is for a lot of these solutions that are getting built in India right now, to get access to global markets, to get access to what the lay of the land is in those parts. So say if somebody like a Radesh or a Mayura want to take their solution, she's working with disability, he's working with industrial craft that can be scaled. It has global applications. Now, where does that bridge? How do we build those bridges between Indian entrepreneurs and communities? And we would like to think that the diaspora is best placed to sort of build those bridges. And that is something that we definitely need to do, because some solutions will work really well in India. for the Indian market, but some solutions are almost designed because they are innovative and perhaps a little way ahead of its time as well, which will actually work well in global markets. And those bridges now are critical to be built, and that's where what you're thinking about would be very, very useful. I hope that answers your question.
More questions, please?
And we are happy to take that up.
Anyone else?
It's not the question, it is more on my thought process, you can say, or my analysis. Whatever the questions has gone through, I just want to share, you talk about the innovation, you talk about the ecosystem, and how we can handle the craft people and all. Because when we talk about the craft, it's a vast term. It could be incorporated with the products, it could be the standalone, the product. So if we are talking about the innovation, I think it should be, we need to think out of the box. Not exactly, if we change the format of that particular craft, definitely we are going to lose the essence of that craft. This is my thought. I'm not forcing it on anybody. But I just want to take an example. You know, Prashant sir said we need to talk about GI products. You know, India have the multiple states and every state have the GI product. We can always make the business around these, and definitely we need the people from the business community to make it, because any business is not in a single process. It is in a huge system is required behind any product marketing. If we are talking about the market fit, if we are talking about any process, it do have the different departments. It need the strategy and everything. Even finances are required for everything. So if you are thinking the craftsman will do and go everything, it is not possible. Yes, we can help them at the level of panchayat, we can help them at the community. It cannot be downloaded from up to down. It should go from down to up. That could be the policy part. I'm talking about an example. We are not recognizing the GI products, the valuation in India, but definitely the entrepreneurs can work around these GI products, and we can take the example of Parada. They talk about Kolhapuri chappals, you know. From many years it is existing with us, the Kolhapuri chappals, but still Parada had taken an first lead and make it their brand.
I think, and I think you had addressed this concept of design, and I think the cultural appropriation conversation is a much broader conversation, and it
Yeah.
also runs into the IP conversation. So I think we need a whole panel on
Panel
that,
of it.
separate
Yeah,
panel. But thank you so much for your
Welcome,
feedback.
And just here's my question goes with the investors. How open you are for the such kind of the new businesses, and how means what are the points you are going to gaze for these kind of the businesses?
Your metrics for
Your
evaluation.
metrics.
I think
I think already we are working with Catalyst. We are working with a different institution, and I can talk about HCL. So we are very open for the new ideas which you are talking about, ma'am, and not the regular stuff. And the fortunate part is there is a lot of support from the board level as well. And as a from the CSR perspective, we can give some time. Actually, it's not an overnight success. Always we know that's how the institution plays, that's how the knowledge partner plays, that's how the implementing factor plays, and it's always a bottom up approach, never a top down. And we do the baseline assessment. What is the requirement? What is the market is looking for actually, rather than a regular stuff? What can be the new opportunity can be existed, and that's a so we never call as a donor and donee, we call as a strategy partner. So we do together. So definitely, whatever the new ideas you have, you let us know. We can evaluate together. We can see. We can do the more visits and all. That's how the foundation works, and be happy to have a conversation on that. Thanks.
any other questions? Yes, please, ma'am. Please introduce yourself before the.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm Rashi Soni, the founder of Rudwai. We work with 600 plus artisans across the country, and we've launched 5 retail stores across North, Central, and South India in the last under 3 years. I just wanted your insights on what is the correct way to get into the international markets, the global markets, especially across Asia, Europe, and the American market, keeping the changing, tides of tariffs in mind and everything else.
Priya, who would like to address this one? Access to market.
I can't speak because after post tariffs, I haven't really studied what is the ways to navigate some of these issues. But what we have seen with some of the enterprises that have tried to navigate global markets is one, you have to. Europe is a whole different sort of beast because the compliance levels are high. You need to have local partners. You need to know what the market itself is looking for. The green and those kind of standards are very, very big in the European markets. However, US has been a lot more open to these kind of approaches. But again, it requires you to spend a whole lot of time trying to, one, understand the market, understand the consumer. It's the same thing that you have to do when you're trying to build in India. You have to, and ideally you need to spend time also in the country, build relationships, local partners, and all of those pieces. And it is a heavy investment piece from what I understand, because being seen in the right places, being seen in the right sort of forums where some of this can be discovered, where some of this can happen, is also, it's an exhausting and time consuming and financially draining process. So unless you're resource draining process, so unless you're absolutely sure about which are how you want to navigate the markets, I would recommend sort of like think this through before you jump in. Two, I believe there are now partners and global organizations that sort of allow for you to navigate this. For example, the Nest Guild, for example, which is Build a Nest, is an organization that is based in the US that has an incubator, not an incubator, but sort of like a group. They not only, I think they give you visibility, money as well. They also are giving money.
It's called Nest, right?
Yeah, Nest. Nest gives money and also has very strong alliances and partnerships with folks like Anthropology and so on, and West Elm and so on and so forth. So that's one kind. Then there are folks like, I forget the name of the big trade fair, but a lot of our craft-based startups have, like Pital has gone and exhibited at the trade fair. I forget the name, the New York one. So there are certain spaces where you should ideally be seen, or you should start building relationships with, because this becomes a great entry point for you to enter the market, and you will need multiple trips to go and understand what the audience is, what are they willing to pay, and so on and so forth.
Dipanshu, if you could.
By the way, Rashi is supported by us as well. So is
Thank
Bipin.
you so much.
So is Bipin. Both of them have done really well. And ma'am, to your point on new idea, just wanted to say, for any funder or investor, execution matters more than the idea. That's the pragmatic approach. Business sense of an idea and execution of an idea is matter. And these two are actually good examples of those execution. Rashi, to your question on export, two very specific points. One way to do this, one of our startups has seen success, is to try and approach small boutique stores in the US and Europe who are stocking Indian products and craft products. There are many such small boutique stores. If you even get 10 or 15 to start with, and this you can do sitting in India only, just search for it on Google or somewhere and just talk to them, give them a catalog or something and start going. That is one.
Correct.
Second, as Priya rightly mentioned, exports, I believe a number is 10 to 12 crores of annual revenue if you have achieved. That's when I think you should ideally start going for exports, because it requires a lot of money which you have to consider lost or burnt completely.
Correct.
If you have that capital, then go ahead with exports. Otherwise, don't. That's a straightforward advice that I have. 10 to 12 CR should be the ideal benchmark. You usually 1.5 to 2 million USD per annum is the revenue that you should be looking at. Beyond that is when exports ideally one should target. With limited resources and limited funding, there is no point going for exports, because all the efforts would mostly be in vain and the money would also be lost, which would be crucial for the business in domestic markets.
Correct. So that should be step 2 or 3 later.
Absolutely, yes.
So, I'm so sorry, just one thing. So, up until a few years ago, Etsy was active in India, and that was a huge boost for our business because we had direct access. So, is there any other platform now that Etsy is not available in India?
I don't think so. I mean, Amazon US is good, but then it's a platform for everything basically. So
Correct,
you don't
correct.
really get visibility. But
You might want to consider Powered by People, because I know they have changed their business model, but a lot of their work is around aggregating orders from very big organizations and then sort of passing it down to smaller businesses. I don't know if they are still active in India because they were part of Kula till last year. I don't know if they're active,
I'll check it.
but you should check them out.
Thank you so much. Correct, correct.
So just to add to what they have said, as far as the export process, apart from all the investment in visibility and being there in the market, which is an investment in itself, the risk that positions you take on inventory, on shipping time, and your cost of money cycle time, because there's a much slightly longer cycle, is quite intense. So you have to have that cash flow and financial position to make that work. So it's in addition to the marketing and visibility and all the other commercial terms that you build in.
Correct.
an investor will never fund just for you to
Correct, correct. Absolutely.
It has to be the money the business is in.
So just to add to this, there are certain organizations which can help in the soft landing. And also you should look at the trade offices of the different countries. For example, UK has a very good program. If you are a startup, you can go there for 9 months. They'll fund you. They will do all the support system. And then if you can survive those 9 months, then you can continue there. So there are various programs of different countries that information is available. Maybe we can talk and share that later.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thank you.
One last thing we've also recently come across, and they did a workshop at our conference at Kula, was Export Circle. So they have some gazillion WhatsApp groups running where I believe it's all about exports. I don't know how many of craft-based businesses are there. I do know that some of the businesses I've seen, but it could also be a good starting point. And I believe they are going to start running accelerators and incubators, which are purely export focused. So you might also want to consider
Sure.
that.
I'll definitely connect with you for that. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Any other questions? Okay, one last question. We're running to the end of our time over there.
Yeah, hi. I have a question. I don't know the art market in India, or I'm very new to this, but I'm an artist myself, and I know how it works in Sweden, where I'm from, with galleries and collectors and stuff. And I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts about that, how it is here, and how is the art market doing?
So, like I said, craft is not, so I can speak from the craft perspective, but also from the folk art perspective. What is starting to change in the art and craft market is one, while the traditional spaces, we do have galleries. We have galleries everywhere. But because craft is now also seen as almost a everyday collectible, unlike in a lot of Western countries where you have the gatekeepers, you have, there's a certain kind of curation that happens and so on and so forth. Craft and folk art and a lot of those kind of art forms are also coming into affordable art categories, which basically means that we have business models, for example, emerging. One of them being, you might want to look them up, called Memeraki, where they have been able to sort of create really good quality folk art art pieces, but also situate them not just within the gallery space, but also within home decor spaces, conferences, as art installations. So that market is also blowing up because increasingly the social capital of, this was not traditionally an art market, let's put it this way, unlike in Sweden and other parts of the world. This is a price conscious market. However, now with people wanting to sort of, decorate their homes and invest in, just being socially mobile, I think the art market is also growing, and craft is an integral part of that market, which we are also seeing with interventions that the government is running across the country.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. I've been in India 17 years and I'm Canadian, so I had the same thought when I arrived in India. I'm from Montreal, Canada, which is a huge art place where there are galleries from different dimensions. Art is accessible by artists. It's not necessarily a craft thing. There's two things, and this is my perspective here. Why there's less artists? Because being an artist is not encouraged in India. Especially when I arrived, like now it's opening, like Korea University is a liberal arts university, and it's meant to democratize thought process and look at other things. But people who want to become like a musician, who want to draw, they became engineers, they became software. I think that prompted the India's tech industry. That was a good thing. But my sense, but like Priya mentioned, I also notice more and more. But I think it'll take a mindset shift. Like for example, Chennai, where I live, I see now I'm from. It's extremely conservative, like a little bit tambram. And one of my colleagues said, my son wants to learn guitar. He's 13. I said, oh, brilliant. So he sent him to this Carnatic music special. I don't know. I don't understand Carnatic music. It's while I appreciate many forms, Carnatic music is something I would not sit 3 hours for. Yes. So the son was a bit disappointed because he wants to learn like songs like, I don't know, Metallica, whatever. So I think even the parents, I think that mindset shift. I don't know
Yeah,
if you know
so I
anything,
think
yeah.
we were all a little crazy 30 years ago. Or we were considered crazy and reckless when we chose to work in the arts sector.
Yeah, maybe that's
And that has changed. It's actually seen as a profession now. And, you know, and I go to a few schools once in a while and I speak to kids who are finishing school and talk about life in the arts after that. And very often there's this question of academic versus art. And, you know, I'm going into my 12th or I'm going into my 10th and everyone wants me to stop dancing or singing. And I keep telling them that keep it up. Everything gets a priority at some stage in life, but at the end it keeps you sane. You know? So yes, the arts market in India is evolving, the community is growing, and you know it's formalizing steadily. It's changed a lot from where we arrived, all of us. And you know, when we look back today, sometimes you wonder, were you that mad to actually choose to do this? You know, but coming back to where we are today, this afternoon we have the same wonderful group and a few others. This afternoon in this space, a few crafts and arts organization will be pitching for investment, will be for incubation, again under the auspices of the Bridge Incubator Project. And if you're free, we would love to have you here. That happens this afternoon from 2:30. I'd like to thank each one of you. I mean, for an arts person to get this much insight into the craft sector has been an education in itself. And thank you all for all your time and insight. I thank everyone at Serendipity to have the guts to put together a panel on this subject. And all of you for being here today in a panel that I was wondering, I said, are we really going to get an audience together? This morning, Varun and I had this conversation. And the fact that you're here, and I think it's credit to the panelists that they've held your attention and hopefully helped you. Thank you all for being here, and see you all in the afternoon. Grab a bite of lunch.
Thank you.